You are now listening to the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast.
G'day guys, on today's show we're going to be covering the fullback position in depth. We're going to be going through all things fullback. So we're going to be touching on the 5 highest owned fullbacks. We're going to go through the premium options, the mid-range and the cheapies, and we're going to reveal our own fullbacks. I'm your host, the Supercoach Braino, and I'm joined as always by my trusty co-host, the Supercoach Matrix. How you going, Matty?
Yeah, we're talking about fullbacks, and this is probably a position that I've looked the least at. Not looking to pot it up. I made my decision early, and I believe I made the right one. I could not be more sure about a position than fullback. So,
yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you, when we did the team picker, haven't even changed your fullback since the first time you opened the app.
No, I haven't changed it yet since before Supercoach properly opened this year.
Yeah. And I think we were talking about what our fullbacks had looked like at the end of last season, knowing that there was going to be one particular player that was going to be severely underpriced. So we'll talk about him, I'm sure, today.
Yeah.
But, mate, before we get stuck in, for everybody watching this on YouTube, if you love the content, if you're finding it's benefiting you and helping you with your team this year, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like, turn those notifications on to support the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever it is you get your podcasts, hit the follow button as well so you get those notifications there too. Mate, let's talk through the most owned players. 42% at 836,000 is Teddy. What are your thoughts on Teddy?
So I had him to start last year. And I sillily, I don't even know if that's a word, but I did trade him out at some stage throughout the year. It's just, I needed a bit of cash. He wasn't getting 100 every week. I don't know. There was just something about him that I got rid of him. And I made a mistake because I had to get him back and waste a couple trades. I ran out of trades at the start of last year, and I'm just going to go out and say it. I'm not going to make that mistake this year.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I'm not going to go and say I won't trade him out. In my head, I have a little bit of a plan on how I'm going to play the origin period, and I think it's going to come down to me trading out Teddy. But in saying that, I think I traded him out after like 4 rounds or something. That was a massive rookie error from me. So I won't be doing that again like you. But also, like, when we look at Teddy, right, like, let's look at Teddy as a player. Like, we know he actually starts relatively well every single year. I think his worst start last year still averaged 76 after the first 6 rounds. Like, if you're upset with a 76 average, you probably got nothing else going on in your team. You must be coming first. So,
do you look at the Roosters every year and think, I can't get any better than this? And it just does?
Last year I didn't. Last year they had a shocker to start the season. And I loaded up in Roosters players. I started with Crichton, Tedesco, all of them.
Sorry, I'm talking about on paper. On paper, they just look like the best team every year.
Yeah, I agree with that. This year is insane. And we've both tipped them to win the competition. We've been pretty open about that when we talked about the Roosters, did the Roosters team preview. So I still believe that. I still think everybody's overreacted to one bad trial game as well. I think we need to remember that you can't win the competition in February. I'm not concerned at all with the Roosters. They're going to come good. Whether they start hot, which I think they will do, or whether they come good at round 5, 6, 7, that's not a concern for me at all. Teddy's still going to get there. He's still going to score his points.
So Teddy, since 2019, has scored over 1 ppm. He scored 1.1, 1.2, 1.1, and then 1 last year. That's 80 points a game. He averaged 79. We might even be getting him at a small discount at 840k, which is ridiculous to say out loud.
Crazy. That's crazy. And one thing we need to look at and the one thing that the stat that I always look at when I'm looking at every position is what their base stats are, which are the points they accumulate through minimal effort. You know that they're going to get them week in, week out. And Teddy had, I think, the 3rd best base for a fullback at 31 points per game. And he had the most evade stats, so tackle breaks, line breaks, etc., at 25. So he averaged 25 evade stats per game. So that's 56 points when you put his base and evade together that you know that you're going to be able to bank every single week. And then let's add some scoring on top of that. You might score a try. There might be a few power stats in there as well. So,
can I play a trivia question with you?
Yeah.
Out of all the teams in the comp that Teddy has ever played against, Who has he scored his highest score the least against? And I'll give you $100 if you get it right.
Tigers.
The Roosters.
Oh, okay. There you go. Because he was at the Tigers.
Yeah, exactly.
Poor guy had no opportunity over there.
I'll get my $100 back. But apart from that, it's the Panthers. So maybe on a really, really good week when he's playing... on a really bad week for Teddy, when he's playing the best teams in the comp, maybe you just VC him instead of see him. He's never scored over 100 against the Panthers, and that is the only team, except for the Tigers, that he's ever never scored a ton against. So
there you go, mate. Cool. I've got a bit of trivia for you. So I mentioned that he's got the third best points per game in base. Who do you think has the best base stats at a fullback position? Probably wouldn't expect it. You just mentioned their team.
I was thinking Latrell, but tell me.
Dylan Edwards.
Whee.
36 points per game in base. You know what you're getting with him. So we'll talk about him soon, though, I'm sure.
That's consistency.
Dylan Edwards.
Yeah.
That's it. You're a big Dylan Edwards fan.
Yes.
Now, the next most owned at 39%, 327,000 is Charles Nicoll-Klokstad. Obviously, the fullback over at the New Zealand Warriors. He's gone from the Raiders to the Warriors this year. He's in your team at the moment. He's also in mine. Anything
Not
you want to
fullback,
elaborate
though.
on with CNK?
No,
not a fullback in the centre wing.
So he is playing fullback, but we're playing him at centre wing. And I do want to look at any fullback starting at the centre wing, but not everyone needs to be added. I have had Tyrell Sloan at the start because I thought he's going to get the opportunity, and then I realised the Dragons are trash. I looked at Hayes Perham, and then I realised he's actually not that good. They're just guys that will watch and they'll get the opportunity. But Charles Nicoll-Klokstad, yeah, he's got something about him. He's only 330k. He's not a big risk. Like, if you look at the Hammer and you look at Charles Nicoll-Klokstad, where are you going to go? They're the same. Yeah. Actually, they're about the same percentage owned. So,
yeah, they are too. They are. So you mentioned Hammer. Let's touch on him now before we go to the other two obvious options. So, Hammer's 34%. We'll probably dive into these guys that are dual centre wing fullback a little bit more in the centre wing pod. But we're big advocates of Trap City with Hammer. You still feel the same?
Yeah, he was 39% owned and it's actually come back to 34% owned. I think after that trial game where, all these people that, they're not the Melbourne Storm of whatever that year was, 1999, where they went that good. This Dolphins team has really struggled to get a lot of talent. They basically took the utility from the Cowboys to slot him in at fullback. I think people are catching on. He averaged sub 35 points at fullback for the third best team in the comp. Imagine how bad he can be on the worst team in the comp.
Second worst, I reckon. Dragons will give him a run for the spoon.
Yeah, probably.
But in saying that, it's going to be a pretty close race. So,
yep.
34%. I feel like that'll continue to come down, but it's still way too high. Anything more than 10% owned for Hammer. I know that the enticing factor is the fact that he's fullback in a new team, but that doesn't mean that he's going to play well. He scored better at centre for the Cowboys. But anyway, let's see. We'll see what happens. We're fading him. I'm happy for people to take him.
Do you mind if I grab the next guy?
Go for it.
Since as I talked you into Tommy Trbojevic, Tom Trbojevic, 577k, 35% owned. Honestly, it took me longer to spell his name than it did for me to add him into the lineup because, it was really hard work. I had to Google it. It took me like 3 minutes. But for one of the best Supercoach players of all time, I'm spending 577k. I don't care that he had a injury-riddled season last year. He's had a lot of time to recover. The talk is that he's coming back. I still can't believe the discussion around the Supercoach community was to fade this guy. And I can't believe he's only 35% owned. If I go back in time 2 years ago and I say that you can get this guy at 577k, you would call me a liar. If I went back last year and said 577k, 80% of the Supercoach community would want him. I just think that it's the biggest no-brainer in Supercoach this year.
Yeah, he's 35% owned, which is still way too low for somebody of Turbo's
Burton was more owned than this guy.
Yeah, that's insanity. Everybody must have forgotten. And I think everyone looks at 2021. We've mentioned it a few times as a bit of an anomaly with the scoring of that year. Everybody seemed to score much higher, but 143 season average. That is just out of this world. He scored 28 tries that year.
Inflated stats. Wind it back 20. It's still 120.
But 21 was also the year where the season got cut short and Turbo played less games. I think he ended up playing, I think it was 16 or 17 games and scored 28 tries. Just absolutely insane stats. And apparently he's said to be healthy this year. He's ready to go round one. They've been pretty open about that happening. You need to lock him into your team. You need to have him.
And Manly seem to find a way to make the top 8. If they're a top 8 team, he'll be worth $1 million. You're getting him at 50 cents to the dollar. And even if he's not 100% himself, he can cover his 55 break even on one leg.
Boom shakalaka!
Yeah.
Pretty much a no-brainer, for sure.
Yeah, put it away.
And also, I think it's also worth noting that the next guy that we're going to talk about did his same rehab on that hamstring in the US with the same guy that Turbo's just gone and seen. So, same guy that rehab. We saw what the next person that we're going to talk about and how he came back in Latrell Mitchell from the States. $889,000, and he's earned every single cent of that price tag this year at a 15% ownership, which I understand why it's not 30 or 40%, because that's a very, very premium price. That's Nico Hines, Nathan Cleary kind of price that you're paying for Latrell. Were you tempted by Latrell at the start of the season?
So I have never been, but I think with every position that we've spoke about, there's been a premium luxury player, and I haven't always got them. We're talking your Tarpanies. We're talking your Cam Murrays. We're talking Nico and Cleary. I find a bit of a tie. I think that's Latrell, and I'm not going premium luxury. I'm just going premium in Tedesco because I can see Tedesco and Latrell averaging the same at the end of the year, and I'm saving myself $50K. There's a harder draw for Souths, and there's an easier draw for, the Roosters. Yeah. I wish I could have him in my team. I wish I had a third fullback position and an extra $1 million. I just don't have it.
Yeah, if I could have 15 million to make my team instead of the 11.4 or whatever it would be, that'd be great. Tommy Sangster, if anybody can reach out to him.
So your first iteration had Latrell this year, didn't it?
I did. I went Teddy and Latrell in the team picker. Yeah, and because I had Latrell basically a game after he came back and went on that massive run and averaged 100 for the rest of the season, and he was just incredible. We're looking at a guy that kicks goals and is a pretty good goal kicker for the Rabbitohs, who score a lot of points. He's a tackle-breaking beast, absolute machine. The only reason I don't have him is because of Turbo at nearly half the price. That's the only reason. If you take Turbo out or Turbo gets injured, I'm not really going to look at anybody else at fullback. I'm going to go and find the cash to go up to Latrell Mitchell, I think, if things don't work out with Turbo. I'm that high on him. He's fixture-proof as well. We need to remember, we looked at it last year and we said, the Rabbitohs have a really tough run when Latrell gets back. He didn't give a shit. He went out and just dominated every team, and the Rabbitohs went on a massive winning run at the back end of the year to finish. When did they finish last year? I think they finished mid-table or mid-sixth.
Yeah, they were fifth. Fifth, yeah.
And
they looked like they were going to miss the 8.
Back.
Yeah.
So he's got a really low base. I'm usually big on base, but you've got to have a couple of big upside guys like David Fafita, like your Latrell Mitchells, that are going to score the 150s. And Latrell can score 150 against any team whenever he wants.
He's one of those blokes that has the base but also has the upside. He's pretty incredible for Supercoach.
Yeah, he's got the highest create stat in the game with all those, like we were talking about earlier, those, on the last pod on 5-8 pod talking about Cody Walker, where Latrell gets the sweeping fullback, try assist out to Johnston. That's where all of those points are coming from. That 32 in create points per game on average last year, which is just nuts. And then you add in the goal kicking. I understand exactly why people are paying up for him, but it's just Turbo just kind of dulls that ownership percentage.
Yeah, I've got a confession to make.
Go on.
I've never owned Latrell.
Okay. I mean,
it's probably why I'm not boasting my scores every week about where I finished. But yeah, I have just found him hard to pay up for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first time I've taken him last year. He was so up and down before last year. You know you were going to get your 110s or whatever, but you also get the 20s when he just didn't look interested. But you didn't get that from him last year. He looked interested in every game. He wanted to play. He wanted to compete. He wanted to play well. He came back a new man when he came back from the States.
Did he say that he didn't want to play Origin, or like he didn't want to play something because he was focusing on club footy?
No, it was so when he was injured and he was just coming back, so he just got back from the States, they were going to pick him in Origin, and he told Freddie Fittler not to because he only just came back and hadn't played any NRL football yet.
Mate,
So-
like, from a personal standpoint, like, yeah, looking at that, he wants to score big points, and he wants to be the man at South, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He's a very passionate Souths player.
He scored at
We know that he wants to
1.1
win.
last year.
Yeah, I believe that. That's what, 90, roughly 89, something like
Who
that.
do you think? Okay, to get your $100 back.
Okay.
No, for $100, who do you think that he scores the least against?
Oh, look, I wouldn't know without having stats in front of me. I'm just going to have a guess. I
Just
reckon
guess. Just guess. You've got a 1 in 16 chance.
Cowboys.
Raiders.
Raiders are pretty good defensively.
Yeah. Yeah, he's played him 5 times. He once scored a 17. He must have been coming off the bench or got injured. But yeah, his highest score against them is 73.
Yeah, that's pretty low for Latrell.
Which is still crazy. You said Cowboys, did you? Yeah, that was
Yeah,
76.
Oh, so I was close. Okay.
Yeah, you were. Banged out 160 against the Tigers once.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You probably
Nearly
still
every
have
player in the
nightmares
league has,
against
mate. So
Yeah,
still good.
yeah, fair.
But mate, that's our premiums done and dusted. Our top 5 owned done and dusted. Pretty easy to get through those guys, knowing that they're probably taking up the majority of the ownership in the fullback position this year. It's one of those positions where you're probably just going to pay up for 2 guns. You're not going to look cheap. But we'll touch on the cheapies anyway at the end just to cover that. But guys, before we move into our premium options and touch on these really pricey guys, we've obviously got our unlimited group up and running at the moment, and it'll be up and running and available for entry over the next, I'd say, 3 to 4 weeks before we shut it out. So the unlimited code is 451840. Championship ring on the line. Jump on the pod with us and have a chat with us at the end for the winner. So get involved in that. Matty, let's move on to the most expensive options.
How much is this, Marie?
It's very expensive.
Oh, we've talked about a lot of money spent in a lot of these guys. We've been talking about Latrell Mill at $889,000, and there's a bloke at fullback that's more than that.
And he won't play for minimum 8 weeks in Pappenhausen, unfortunately.
Yeah, he is getting rehab at that same bloke that we talked about with Trell and Turbo. Yeah, I don't know who this guy is. This injury
Crazy
whisperer
stuff.
for the NRL. Yeah, everybody's going over to him. Yeah, even I don't think that from what I've seen of how much this guy's moving, we might not see him for half the year.
That's my guess, to be honest.
Don't add him in your team.
No, honestly, I would even say he's going to drop a fair way in draft now. He could be a guy you just stash because you're not going to see him for half the season. I reckon we're going to see him after Origin. That's my guess.
He went at the 6th pick in the draft that I did earlier, and I was thinking that maybe if this guy was here in the 3rd or the 4th round, I'd grab him. And like even then, like you sort of sit there in the 3rd or the 4th round, and you see the blokes and I picked up injured players. Like I took Sean Lane, but you sit there in the 3rd or the 4th round, and you're taking a guy, and you're like, this guy isn't going to win me a comp. This guy, if he comes back in the 8th week, could win you the comp, but not at number 6. You're going to be 0-8 because you don't have a captain for starters.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And we're talking about Classic. Look, let's have a look when he comes back.
Yeah.
Don't jump early. Don't get on him as soon as he comes back without actually having a look first, because that injury was brutal. It's going to take him a long time to get back. Will we ever see the kind of explosiveness that we're used to from Pappenhausen ever again? I really hope we do, but there's so much doubt there for me now.
That injury was as bad as Jarrell Yo-Yee's. I was there that night, and yeah, he never saw the footy field ever again. I was worried about that. But looks like he could play, but like the Storm are gonna look there. I think they're gonna be in a position to play finals with or without Pappy. I think they're gonna ease him in. If he comes in round 12, say comes off the bench and eases his way into it and loses a lot of cash, hey, there could be like imagine bringing Pappy into finals. To be noted, the Storm's draw towards the end of the year is actually really, really good. You're probably going to want some Storm players, and I'm going to be looking at your blokes like Munster and your Pappy for those last probably 6 rounds after Origin.
Yeah, good shout. Good shout. Tackle that with Pappenhausen when you get to that point, because you're not going to be seeing much of him.
No.
First half of the season, mate. So let's move on to our next premium option. At 6% owned, 746,000 is Scotty Drinkbolter. I'll leave this one to you, mate, because you enjoyed his services last year.
Wait, just give me a moment. I don't know if I'll see Scotty Drinkbolter in my team again. If he went to Redcliffe, I think maybe he's a guy. He just seems to be able to pull the rabbit out of the hat. It's a curly one. I was running him at 5'8", and I believe he's lost that duel. He is so, he is the definition of rocks and diamonds. I had him through all these hundreds and through that 12 he scored against the Panthers, and I was pulling my hair out. There's not too many guys that you can see ton up as many times as Scott Drinkbolter did last year, and then he pulls a 12 against the Panthers. He's definitely not a bloke like Latrell that is fixture proof. I really like the Cowboys draw. I probably have maybe 200 times I've mentioned it. It is extremely soft. He's not going to play Origin. If he's come back in, Turbo and Teddy, if they're fit, are going to be playing Origin. Latrell is going to be playing Origin. If you did need to move on from someone, yeah, maybe you could just move it into Scotty Drinkwater, float through the Origin period. I haven't really looked at their draw through the Origin period, but it's probably a play. He's not somebody I'll look to start.
Sometimes maybe shit.
That is the definition of him.
Yeah, I can't do it. Yeah, I mean, the fact that he can score 100 and then score 12 means he's going to average 55. He's not for me.
Yeah, but he didn't last year. He still averaged really well. The good outshone the shit. He's actually gone up in price since we had gone up in value since we've he's 7% owned now. But I think people are just looking at that draw, but he's 20 grand more expensive than Val Holmes, the goal kicker. And Val Holmes never scored a 12 last year. I'll tell you that for free.
He did not. I think people are just looking for a pod. I don't think you need to look for a pod at fullback. I think you look for your pod elsewhere. But mate, we'll move on. So Ruben Garrick, we'll talk a bit more about him in the centre wing, the centre wing pod. So make sure to keep an eye out on that if you're keen on Garrick. You made a point about looking around the Origin period and maybe downgrading or whatever to Scotty Drinkwater, whether it be Turbo or Teddy, whoever you decide. The guy I'm looking at as a downgrade option for Teddy or Turbo or however I play it, probably Teddy, through Origin, will be Clint Gutherson. The reason for that is that Parramatta play all 3 major bye rounds. We know he's not going to play Origin again, but he also scored the second most amount of points at fullback last year. So availability is sometimes the best ability. And this guy's always playing. He's a leader within that group. He's obviously not kicking goals because Mitchell Moses is, but he has the ability to. So if Mitchell Moses goes down with injury, Gutho picks up the kicking duties. I'm a fan of Gutho. I started the season with him last year, actually, funnily enough. And he made me a little bit of cash. And then I moved him. I can't remember who I moved him to, but I moved him on after he made me, I think, 100K. So he averaged 68 last year. It just flies under the radar, Gutho, because everybody's looking at these big hitters like Latrell, like Teddy, like Turbo, and you forget about the accumulators like Gutho. So there's definitely way worse options than going with Clint Gutherson. You just don't start with him because they've got that really tough run that first 6 rounds.
So I like it, and I think there's merit to it. And if he drops cash in the first 6 rounds, Yeah, let's chat about him then. But leading into the next bloke, Dylan Edwards is, I think, if you find yourself down and you're looking for a bit of a pod, the consistent Clive Churchill medalist would be a really good option.
100%. 77% of games last season, he scored more than 60. That's like nearly Nico Hines, Nathan Cleary territory with that number. So you hit the nail on the head when you talked about you want a reliable guy in your team. You're taking Dylan Edwards. The problem is people are also taking Cleary. They're taking To'o. They're now taking Taruva. They're taking Garner. How many Penrith Panthers players can you have in your squad with a round 4 bye? Is it round 4 or round 3? I think it's round 3.
Yeah, ask me after round 4 how many I can have.
Yeah, that's when people will start.
Because he's not going to play Origin.
Yeah, that's right. But again, you just got to be wary of how many guys you can have unavailable at one time from the same team. So I think people are not looking at Edwards because they've got so many Panthers players in their squad already. Yeah. But quality player, great base, we mentioned earlier, very consistent. So if you like consistency,
prefer Dylan Edwards over Gutho and Scotty Drinkbolter.
Yep. Yeah, fair call. Especially if you're taking risks elsewhere and you want that safe play, could be a good option. Yep. Mate, let's move on to the mid-price maniacs. Your boys first. Take us away.
Reece Walsh has a fractured eye socket. He might be back to start the year. He might be back round 2. He was a guy that I initially looked at getting, and then I looked harder, and then I thought, I can't start the season without Tedesco. I just don't overthink it at this position. But if I was looking for a bit of a pod play, I think the Broncos are better than the Warriors. I think he's at home. I think he wants to be there. He loses goal kicking. I don't know if that affects him too much because I think that he will be a lot better being for a better team. But yeah, I'm excited to watch him from a football standpoint. Yeah, I'm not super interested from Supercoach.
I think you mentioned the goal kicking. Does it necessarily hurt his scoring? I don't think he improves as much as what he could do if he was kicking. So you see him taking a step up. Oh, I do too. He's obviously back home. He's where he wants to be. He's playing football where he wants to play football. So he's definitely going to play better football than he did in New Zealand. But you take the goal kicking away and you take that safe, probably 8 to 12 points a game away from him. But then he gains 8 to 12 points in improved performance. You're pretty much sitting at exactly where he's priced. So he's not a look, but I mean a very enticing option when when the draw gets a bit friendly for the Broncos.
I just think he's a really good get for the Broncos in general.
Absolutely.
But leading into guys that are around that price range, I think Ponga would probably be a better option in the mid range. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, we spoke about it on the 5'8" pod.
Because he got duel today. How good.
He got, mate, it's elite. That's one of my favourites. Him and Taruva getting the duel. And also, it's funny, we went through these positional podcasts and we've been able to talk about the duel in the last couple, but we just missed the second row one where Gerbo got duel. That's pretty relevant. Kepi got duel. There's a lot going on in at Supercoach HQ that we've missed out on here.
Yeah. Just to take a bit of a tangent, I am now looking at Ponga, but at certain times today, I had Gerbo and Kepi in my team. So
I love it. Just get as many duels as you can in now. It's just free for all.
Yeah. It's better option than Jack Howarth.
It is. Well, mate, I don't know whether that guy's going to play for the Storm again, based on what I've seen. But anyway, we digress. Ponga in the 5'8" position is a look. At fullback, he's not. So is a pretty safe move on there. If you want to hear about why we're keen on Ponga, head back and listen to the 5'8" episode. We go into a fair bit of depth there about our love for the great KP. The next guy is his mate that's taken his position from last year, and that's Lockie Miller at 593,000, 7% owned, has a dual position, centre wing fullback. Probably more relevant to talk about in centre wing, so we'll probably expand a little bit more on there, but for me, he's a bit of a watch this space. New squad, new spine.
I just want to say my initial reaction was, mate, I'm going to go add Lockie Miller. You type it in, then you realise he's 590k, and then you're like, no.
Yeah. I thought he would have been in the 400s. Based on, I think he only played,
He'd be in my
6
team
games
in the
last year?
400s. Yeah, he'd be in my team in the 400s.
Yeah, I definitely would be looking at him if he was in the 400s for sure. So
Oh,
that price tag is
not at fullback.
Yeah,
No,
that's right.
Gross.
That's right. And the last fullback, I guess, that we haven't touched on is Will Kennedy. He's at 545,000.
No, he's going for 10.
He can go to the bin. Yeah. So there's a reason why he's 1% owned. That's the only note I've written for Will Kennedy.
The backup for him, you mentioned in our Sharks podcast, was it Cade Dykes?
He's gone down, Cade Dykes, hasn't he? With the season
So
ACL.
really good footballer, got injured. So Will Kennedy's going to be there for the whole year.
Unless Kale Iro comes through. Kale Iro is touted to be the next guy. He's youngster coming up, had a really good year in the New South Wales Cup. So I think he's next in line.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put a step out of line if I was Will Kennedy at the moment. A few breathing down his neck. There's not a lot of upside. He is that mid-range if you're looking to save a bit of money, and he's probably going to get you 50 through the origin period, I suppose. But yeah, I'm looking for a bit of upside.
Fullback position, you spend big to get big points. I'm not looking for 50s.
Origin's hard because I think everybody that we've talked about that I want in my team plays Origin.
Yeah, because they're all the best players, right? That's
they're
why
all
they play Origin.
Yeah, they're all the best players, and that's probably why Will Kennedy becomes relevant. I would find the money for Dylan Edwards myself, but yeah, I do understand. He actually, last year I noticed he took a spike through that period, and then everybody just traded him back in, and went and got Trelmit. So,
yeah. Mate, moving on to the cheapies to wrap things up.
Can I just make one thing about the mid range?
You can.
How crazy is it that Turbo's actually in the mid range?
Oh wow, he is too. We didn't write any notes on him here because there wasn't much point talking about Turbo.
Turbo is cheaper than Lockie Miller. Boom.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, cheapies, let's go.
Let's do it. Now, there's no pure fullback here I'd look at. Every single one of the people in this list, and we haven't even bothered doing the full list because we'll talk about all of them and more in the Centre Wing pod. That's going to be an absolute monster of an episode. So there's so much to talk
2 hours.
through. It could, honestly. We've managed to drag out the West Tigers podcast for nearly half an hour, so you don't know what we're going to do with the Centre Wing one.
Wait, I'm just doing the math. 2 hours. That's 7 bolters.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
Mate,
$34 from BWS. So
nice. Mate, Tyrell Sloan, the Hammer, Taruva, Charles Nickel-Clockstad, Bailey Hodgson, Hayes Perham, Charlie Staines. The list goes on, right? All of these guys are dual fullbacks. None of them you are putting in the fullback position.
Mm-hmm.
None of them. It makes no sense to put someone where centre wing is predominantly cheapy central. You always get a lot of really good cheap options in centre wing. There's no point going cheap at fullback. You go 2 premiums at fullback, that's where you get your most points. You've got the guys that kick goals, you've got Latrell, you've got Teddy, you've got Turbo, the 3 best fullbacks in the game. Fullback is a high-scoring position. You just spend up. Do you agree?
Yeah, I'm not mucking around with fullback. I haven't changed it since the team picker, so...
And so we've got the same fullbacks, so we may as well kind of go through that now. We've both got Teddy and Turbo. That's a lock. We've talked about it a fair bit through this pod, so I'm assuming a fair few other super coaches do, considering Turbo is 37% owned and Teddy's 42 or something, I think, from memory. So it seems like everybody's running that combo.
I can see running Latrell, but I do think that their draw is pretty ordinary to start, and I think that you just do it week 6 and running those 2 guys. We're going to have to do something about Origin, but we'll have a pod about that too. So, yeah,
plenty more planning to come. You just worry about getting your team set to go, and then you adjust as you go. So.
First 13 weeks, Teddy and Turbo, lock it in, lock and load.
That's it. Enjoy the run, mate. That wraps us up for fullback. For everybody that made it all the way to the end, thanks for listening. Hopefully you took something from it. Make sure to hit subscribe, hit like, hit those notifications, turn them on, and follow us on Spotify or Apple or wherever it is you get your podcasts so that you don't miss out anything in the future. We've got one more positional podcast to do. So we'll knock over the centre wing in the coming days, and that'll come out to you guys by the end of the week. But otherwise, if you've got any questions, hit us up in the comments. and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But thanks, guys. You've listened to the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast. We'll catch you later.
Cheerio.